Okay, looks like we're live.
All right, we're live. Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. And before we call the meeting to order, let's do a roll call. See who all's here.
President Lindman.
Here.
Vice President Getz.
Here.
Commissioner Castellini.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner North. Commissioner North.
You on mute, Molly?
I'm not on mute.
Okay, we can hear you now. Thank
There's
you.
a lot of background noise, I think, coming from your speaker, Mary.
Okay, I'll make sure to keep myself muted.
All right, we're all here then. So meeting is officially called to order. First item of business is the acknowledgement of public comments. And we're not going to acknowledge any public comments today as there were no public comments. So second item is the approval of the January 21st meeting minutes. We have a motion to accept those. Are there any changes or alterations to those? Okay.
I'd move to accept the minutes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Mary, lead us through the roll call vote, please.
President Lindman.
Yes.
Vice President Getz.
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Yes. Motion
Yes.
passes.
Molly's playing hard to get, huh?
For why I can't, my volume won't go over the other speakers, but yes.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you. The motion passes, right? So moving on to the next item is the approval of the special meeting minutes, February 4th. Any changes or alterations? If none, can we have a motion to accept those as presented?
So moved. Second.
All right, Mary.
President Lindman.
Yes.
Vice President Getz.
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini.
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the new business then, first item up is the proposed sale of property, the Hollister area. So Steve is going to lead us through that, and then we're going to hear from Dan and have any discussion.
Thank you. Good morning, all.
Hey,
So
Steve.
the Hollister Recreation Area is owned by the Park Board. It's managed by the Recreation Commission. It's one of over 30 sites that's operated and managed by the Recreation Commission. The site is in Mount Auburn, just off of Vine Street. It contains a basketball court, parking lot, and tennis courts. And Uptown Rental Properties, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes from Dan Schinberg, has asked to purchase the property. A number of community organizations have expressed support for the sale. It hasn't yet gone before the Recreation Commission, but the Director of Recreation and the President of the Recreation Commission is supportive of the sale. The site is problematic in that it is largely hidden from view from Vine Street. Historically, the back of the site has been a repository for trash and debris. It's also, unfortunately, held homeless encampments over the years. The basketball court is in relatively good condition. A number of the tennis courts are not. It tends to be in a wet area. There aren't definitive plans yet since this is very early in the process, which is why the board's being asked for conceptual approval. And as you'll hear from Dan, he doesn't yet have definitive plans for the site. We've assessed the site in terms of the criteria that the board uses when they consider any property sale. The first two things are that no sale of property will be considered if there's scarce or threatened natural resources on the site, which is not the case here. Also, no sale be considered unless the park board can receive at minimum the appraised value of the site. The other conditions are outlined in the report, and in fact, this property and the sale of part of this property meets most of those conditions. There does appear to be community support. The property is not suitable for specific park use in that much of it, again, is hard to see. It's hidden from sight from Vine Street. Part of the site is a wet area. If part of the property can remain as open space is a consideration. If the property represents a threat to health, safety, and welfare, and because of the homeless encampments there in the past and the difficulty of getting to the debris that's dumped on the site, it is a threat to the public health and safety. Also, if there's a higher and better use, and if the sale of the property will result in increased park acreage or funding from the sale can be used to purchase park land. I should say that as we look to the 2007 master plan, it did have a plan for Inwood Park within it. And one of the recommendations of the plan was to sell a part of this site, the rear of the site, for residential use. So it is consistent with the master plan. As I said, most of these conditions are met due to the lack of visibility, due to the condition of the site. We don't know at this point how many trees can be saved. That's something that if the sale is approved, we'd work with the developer to determine how many trees can be saved and also determine what the value of the trees would be that would be lost. So finally, we're recommending a conceptual sale. There's much work to do before a sale agreement could be brought forward. The conditions include that Park Board would review the design of the development. We'd be very interested in how the development would face the park. The sale price would be at base at least the appraised value. And then two more conditions: that the developer would pay for the value of the trees lost, and there'd also be financial consideration for the maintenance of the park. And then finally, that the proceeds of the sale, as the community would like to see, would be reinvested in Mount Auburn, primarily in Inwood Park, but also consider reinvestment in other parks and recreation sites in the Mount Auburn neighborhood. That's a quick overview of the report. And if there aren't any questions at this point, I turn it over to Dan.
All right, Dan, looks like you're up.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity for us to present what we feel is a continuing reinvention, if you will, of Inwood Park. I promised Kara that this would be 3 to 4 minutes and then open it up for questions, because you have a very detailed a binder of information there. But essentially, 5 or 6 years ago, we recognized Inwood Park as an incredible gem of the city. And when we referred to the 2007 Uptown Parks Plan, we really have been working in concert with the park board. And when I say we, I really represent a partnership of Uptown Rental Properties and North American Properties. We are 50-50 partners in this endeavor and several other endeavors in the Uptown area. Inwood Park is a park that had really fallen into disrepair, and through the Wellington development that was done on private property but adjacent to Inwood Park, we've really been able to provide a lot of funding for Inwood Park and continued kind of the resurrection of this incredible asset. The recreation area that's specifically being considered this morning is very long and narrow, and therefore has very limited access and it's only accessible from Vine Street, but the whole property is about 250 feet wide, but very, very long. And the area to the back and the tennis courts are low lying. Essentially, what we are proposing here is that about 2/3 of the property, the back part of it that is blighted and underutilized, would be sold, and the proceeds of the sale, and if I get my way, a portion of ongoing revenue would then go to help endow the park. The dollars used from the capital transaction could immediately go directly back into Inwood Park, and not only fixing a problem, but really creating a very vibrant addition to Inwood Park that is now really one of the worst areas and continuing to drag the park down. We are, this is really just being presented as an opportunity. As Steve said, there's enormous work to be done with a lot of considerations from both what this commission would like to see and what the community would like to see, the city and us. And I really see months and months and months of work ahead if you make a decision that you would like to pursue this opportunity. And with that, I think I'd rather open this up for questions that may be of a lot of concern to you guys, since it's so preliminary. We really don't have designs yet and don't have ideas other than we would like to see residential development on this site that would front onto the remaining park land on Vine Street. And so with that, before I conclude, I would like to open it up really for questions at this point.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Any questions for Dan?
And President Lindner, if I may can convey to the commissioners, which I don't know if it was quite captured there, is where we truly are and kind of what's before the commissioners at this moment. It is incredibly accurate. I think as Steve and Dan both alluded to, is that we are in an incredibly preliminary phase. And that the reason this is being brought in front of you today is for informational purposes, as well as to determine whether or not you would be in favor of the city proceeding with Mr. Schimberg in that next phase of discussion. So just to kind of reiterate where we are at in this process is an incredibly preliminary state.
Okay, thank you, Kara.
I want to add quickly that Dan does, as I think you've seen in the materials attached to the report, Uptown Rental Properties does own the property immediately east of the site, and at the northwest corner of the site along Vine Street, they recently purchased a building and a parking lot there that also been something of a problem, and they are offering to add that to the park that would remain, would become a part of Inwood Park.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dan?
I'll just make a comment, Brad, and maybe a couple questions are in here. Of course, I have great admiration for the work that Dan's done in Uptown. I've been a resident in and around the area for a long, long time, and I've really seen it transform under his vision and under his company's leadership, and I'm excited about your continued work in Mount Auburn. I'd also say that from the park board's perspective, something that we can't use as a measuring stick is our collective lack of keeping up with this property over many years. And just to say that when we use an appraised value of the property, that we also have to consider that it's got to be of some meaningful value, obviously, to the park board. And Dan, I know that goes without saying, but I think it's important to say at this preliminary point.
Thank you. Yeah, good point.
Mr. Chair. Oop.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo a few things. Number one, this is being managed, so to speak, by the CRC at this point. So as your representative on the CRC commission, I do want to express that both there has not been discussion at the commission, but this has been a problem property for CRC. And CRC would be totally behind what we are talking about here as far as selling the property. I was happy to see, and I know the discussions are starting to take place, that some of those proceeds would go to CRC so that they can do some improvements to other CRC facilities, probably in the Mount Auburn area. And to CRC's defense, this property has not been under-maintained for a number of years. Just a couple years ago, and I know this because I've only been on the board for a couple years, that property, as has been described, is in a deep hole there, so to speak. And the tennis courts, we had a sinkhole, so to speak, and the tennis court collapsed. So it was a utilized facility. It is visible from Vine Street. It's not unvisible or invisible from Vine Street. And it was a heavily used tennis facility. When that sinkhole occurred, though, it was going to take substantial amount of funding to get that tennis court back into condition. So in the past couple years, it has fallen. The fencing around it has, excuse me, started to collapse. So this has been under the management of CRC, and it's just been recently within the past couple of years that it has fallen in disrepair. There is a basketball court there in front of the tennis court, and that basketball court is heavily used. There is a parking lot there, so there has been a lot of use of the basketball court, which in my discussions with CRC, we would like to use some of these proceeds to perhaps pump into the tennis facility that CRC has at the corner of Martin Luther King and it's either Calhoun or McMicken. I get those streets confused sometime, but at least offer input into other CRC facilities in the Mount Auburn area with some of those proceeds. So I've walked the site. I know that site very well. I'm incredibly thankful for the work that Parks has done with Uptown and the development that's gone on around Inwood Park. So as I look at this, I think it would be a win-win-win, a win for CRC in that a facility that would take a lot of money to rehabilitate after the sinking of the tennis court. I think for Parks with the plans that have been laid out here for us, and I know Uptown's interest in maintaining that green space along Vine Street, it would be a win for the park board, and I think it'd be a win for the city because it would be further development of a very big problem area for the city, and the development as we're looking at the footprint here would be substantially better use for this property, for the whole property. So I am fully in favor of this. I'll take this as an opportunity, though, to say that we should work with CRC to develop some sort of understanding. There's nothing in writing today between Parks and Recreation. So there are several facilities around the city that are owned by Parks, but we have CRC facilities on those sites. So this is a case where obviously in this deal, Parks is working with CRC for a cumulative or a collaborative solution. We should just put something in writing so we know going forward, if somebody approaches us about a piece of property that is currently a CRC site, we've got something down that here's how we do it. But that's just a procedural policy thing as we move forward that came out of this as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's a great opportunity. I'm glad to see Carol online here that to hear the community is behind this. So I'm fully behind it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Linda.
I too am supportive of what I'm hearing about this and what I've read about it. it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And as Jim has said, a win for all around. And especially in a situation where we're talking about divesting park land, which can be a very touchy situation. I think the good thing here is that this one is coming forth with a lot of support from the community and for all the apparent stakeholders. There were just a couple of things for me that were vague, and perhaps it's because we are in the preliminary stages of it, but I wanted to mention them so as we move forward, there are things we can consider. I understand that the tennis courts are in terrible shape, but the basketball courts get a lot of use. And so I wanted to make certain that there is some discussion of how that can be, those can be relocated, or those facilities can be made available for those people who are using those courts now. I see that there is tremendous support from the community council, but when I read that, I thought, the people using the basketball courts are probably not going to community council meetings and voicing their opinions about that particular asset. So I wanted to make sure as we take away something from the community, we're looking at how we can replace that opportunity. The other one was in the report that Mr. Schuckman reviewed, it said the design of whatever goes on the property that we sell will get board approval. And I just didn't understand at all what that meant. Do we get a vote in what whatever it is looks like on the property that we sell? Just a question. And the other one was the distribution of the fund, the proceeds from the sale. I think it said that they would be distributed between parks and rec, but it doesn't say anything yet about what that would look like. And I'm guessing that because it's preliminary, those details haven't been defined, but I think that's something that we need to put some thought against ahead of time versus later.
Would you like me to respond, or Steve, do you want to respond, or do you want me to respond?
Well, let me just respond to one of his concerns. The design review, we've had some very, very early discussions with Dan, and the concern there isn't with our reviewing everything he puts on the site. The real concern is working with Dan and his designers as we move forward to see what tree cover can be retained and what new trees can be planted. Number one. Number two, we're concerned about how his development will meet the rest of Inwood Park at that dividing line where we sell it. And initially, Dan has discussed having front doors facing onto the park, which sounds great. So we just want to be part of that process. We'd rather not have a road between what remains of Inwood Park and his development, and that's not Dan's intention at this point. But those are the kind of issues we want to talk about. And we've had very early discussions I have had with CRC staff to begin to think about where can the basketball court be replaced? Are there enough tennis courts to serve their service area? Where might they need improvements such as the Sanibel Triangle tennis courts on Taft and other places? So again, it's very early in those discussions. Dan.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas, thank you for your thoughtful comments. And indeed, the basketball courts were raised at the at both the Mount Auburn board meeting and the community council as an important component. And so certainly we will want to bring the community in these discussions over the next series of months while we are working on this, to make sure that we have strong community input on some of these priority items, and make sure that those tie with the priorities of the park. That's all a preface to ultimately getting to a situation where this board would approve the actual sale. Right now, we're kind of looking into it. In terms of I want to further Steve's comments a little bit on design. For example, where might a parking lot be that might also be fire access to our development, but also be an asset for the park, kind of like Inwood Park off Wellington, where we put in a parking lot to service the new grilling center and what's ultimately going to be the playground. And so there may be, it's not our parking lot, but it may actually serve as emergency access for the park and our building. Those are the kinds of considerations that must be looked at from a holistic approach, not only from us as the developer, but the park commissioners have to have input here and must be able to be involved in preserving and making sure that the remaining part of Inwood is greatly enhanced from this, and that the development has to be an add, has to be, as Commissioner Getz said, a win-win-win. We have to make sure that what's here, the park is supporting the development, but the development is supporting the park. And that is the park, the community, and us all working together over the next series of months to lay the groundwork for that.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Other questions for Dan or comments?
Dan, Sue Castellini here. If are there any other developers interested besides your partner? Do we know anything about that? And if we decide to go forward with this, will it be open to other developers?
It's a good question. If you notice on the exhibit, Mary, the exhibit with and you guys have the packets, but the exhibit with the blue outlined as the sale opportunity. And there's another exhibit there, which has multicolored orange, but essentially all of the property, this is really a landlocked parcel, Commissioner. If we want to keep green space along Vine Street, which I think is critical, and I think the community does, and the park staff, essentially this is a landlocked parcel. We have an agreement with the city to buy Macaulay, which is an unimproved right-of-way, where you see in the upper right-hand corner of the blue where the number 33 and 35 East McMillan is at the corner. And then everything to the east, this is basically running north-south. So everything from Macaulay all the way to Auburn Avenue is we own. And so this, for multiple reasons, we feel that we are uniquely qualified, and there is an exhibit there that we had previously given to economic development outlining why. But given that we have spent $50 million on an adjacent parcel with Inwood Park as part of phase 1 of this on Wellington, and continue to make big improvements and helping to gather dollars for strengthening Inwood Park and having really site control of everything to the east of this, we feel that we're uniquely qualified in terms of ingress, egress, and really being able to provide the most amount of uplift for the park. To that point, are we the only ones? I would never definitively say that, but I do feel that we are uniquely qualified and uniquely positioned to make this the best it could possibly be.
I will add, Commissioner Castellini, that's a fantastic question, and it is something that the Economic Development Department will thoroughly review.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would just, say I'm very supportive of the idea. I think it's going to be a great solution to what's a, problematic area. And it seems that there's consensus among all the commissioners that there is no reason for us to get in the way of your pursuit, Dan, with along with all the other departments within the city that you have to run through. So I think from what I'm hearing, you have a green light from the Park Commission. And I think, as evidence from your previous projects and partnership, you may be uniquely qualified, and I would agree you're a good asset to that community, and good luck with the rest of the city and getting all your ducks in a row. But I think you got the green light from us, so I'm not sure if there's anything else that we need to discuss then.
Should there be a motion or what? I don't know that thank you very much, President Linder. I didn't know the process.
Is this an action item?
I would add, I do think that since we're at the early stages of this, I think it would be good to go on record as this board, so that, if this takes, which I'm sure it won't, if it takes 3 years, at least we know that this board reviewed all this and we were in favor of the concept and moving forward. So I would make a motion that the park board express its desire to move forward conceptually with the sale of this property as outlined by the report to the board.
Okay, can we have a second on that?
A second.
All right. Any discussion other than what we've already had? Okay, Mary, you want to run us through a roll call vote?
President Linder,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini, Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Dan, good luck and Godspeed to you and your and your partners and projects.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to mix up the agenda a little bit. We've got some folks from BP that have joined us this morning. And so we're going to skip over to item B number 2 and talk about the easement and right-of-way of the Tanglewood Preserve. And let's see, that is Cindy, I believe, that is going to present that.
Good morning.
Morning, Cindy.
Yeah, so for Tanglewood Preserve, we're looking for permission to enter into a right of entry and an easement. And we do have a few representatives from BP on the call if there's any questions. The right of entry is necessary to allow BP to replace an existing oil line at Tanglewood Preserve. The alignment is slightly different for a portion of the replacement, and it will require a small sliver of an easement adjacent to an easement they already have. So we are asking the board to approve issuing a right of entry to BP Oil to construct the replacement oil line and grant an easement to allow for maintenance or repairs in the future. And if you have any questions, we are here to hopefully answer them.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Questions for our folks from BP or Cindy?
Just a comment, I appreciate the thoroughness, Cindy, and what has been presented here as far as remediation following the work. That area is not a heavily used by, it's a preserve, I believe. So I personally don't have any problem with it, given the remediation that's been outlined.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other comments? All right, so hearing none, can we have a motion to accept the recommendation of staff to grant the easement and right of entry for BP on the Tanglewood Preserve?
So moved.
I think the guys from BP were getting a little nervous there. Crickets.
Sweating a little bit.
We just wanted to make you guys sweat a little bit, that's all.
Well, mission accomplished.
Can we have a second? You're not through the woods yet. We need a second.
A second.
All right. Mary, can you lead us through the vote, please?
President Limner,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you.
We're going to back up to number 1 on item B, which is the waterworks easement for Playhouse in the Park. And Cindy is going to lead us through that one again.
Yes, this easement is necessary because the work that's happening over at Playhouse in the Park right now, the water main that's going to the facility needs to be relocated. So because of that, Waterworks is requesting an easement so that they can maintain the new water main that's on our property in the future.
Okay. Questions for Cindy on this issue?
Just a point of clarification. It looks like in the diagram, it's all either underneath or adjacent to existing roadways. Is that right?
Yeah, the water main is going through, let me pull up the drawing again. Yes, the water main is going through Art Museum Drive and also Mount Adams Circle. So Art Museum Drive is actually it's considered right of way now. So the easement that's actually on our property, there's 2 little legs of it that are along Mount Adams Circle. And I think the other one is actually part of Elgin Drive, that little piece right there.
And if I may, Cindy, a little piece of it is not under roadway where it comes down the hill just before it hits Paradrome.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, can we have a motion to grant the waterworks easement recommended by staff?
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All right, thank you. Mary?
President Limner,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Cindy, looks like you're still up to bat. So you're going to talk to us about contracts over $50,000 and additional appropriations.
Yes, we're on a roll, aren't we?
Yeah.
There are several construction projects that are valued at over $50,000, so we need board approval to move forward with them. One of the projects will cover exterior painting work for several park facilities. The other 2 projects we received bids on are for parking lot improvements at Mount Airy. Both of them will serve mountain bike trails. The Deal road lot also includes some ADA improvements so that we will have access to a picnic area that we're making some modifications to. The pricing came back very favorable for the 2 parking lots. So we are asking for board approval to enter into contracts to begin work on all 3 of these projects.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Any questions regarding these different projects?
I had a couple, just as a process standpoint, when I look at the painting of the 3 facilities, 226, 397 total. The last report that we got from you on the capital improvements budget, we had encumbered $326,397 for this project. So this is $100,000 less than what we had encumbered. Where will that $100 go? Seems like I just want to be clear on the transparency then. Where does the additional 100 that we've already got encumbered, where does that then go?
Well, the money wasn't encumbered. I think what happened was originally when Steve and I put together these estimates, this was probably April of last year before we bid the project out at all. We had probably come to an estimate of $100,000 or $150,000 for these 3 projects, and it would have been in several different funds. We bid the project out the first time, and we knew right away that the first bid was going to get thrown out, the low bid. So the number that you see, the $326,000 that I had budgeted, was probably what we thought the award was going to be. It went through the process, and Department of Economic Inclusion rejected all of the bids. So we kept that place mark of the $326,000. The second time we bid the project, the low bid came in at the $226,397. Again, DEI rejected the bids. So purchasing has directed us to go ahead and ask permission to award this as a direct award and still hold the contractor up to the goals that he had put into the bid, even though they didn't meet. So I understand your question. I know I'm not really answering it, is that a lot of times we will put down an estimate and the estimate will be incorrect. So the money will just go back into the pot for another project, and we'll kind of figure it out from there. Another example, these 2 parking lot projects, Steve and I had estimated $200,000 to do 2 of these parking lots. And I think if you go back to October, the board report from October, you can see that we had a line item of $200,000. We talked about it, and just based on some other pricing we had received probably in November, we weren't feeling very optimistic that we were going to come in under 200,000 on those 2 projects. So we changed it and just left the 1 project in the budget. We had already been developing the drawings for both projects. So we went ahead and got pricing for both of them, and we're really surprised at how favorable the pricing came back. So where we had budgeted in the last capital budget that you saw, $100,000 to do 1 of these lots, now we're going to be able to do both of these lots for about $135,000, including ADA improvements to the picnic area that we weren't planning to do until we kind of developed the projects further along.
Yeah. Basically, Jim, if money is in fact encumbered and we do well and it comes in under our original estimate, the money's just disencumbered, returned to source, and we're able to do more infrastructure work.
Which is great. No, I'm thrilled that we're getting the work done. Number one, I'm thrilled that the contract proposals are coming in below our estimates. I think it just raises the overall discussion about capital spending and approval from the board on capital. And I think that we need to work through how the board gets visibility on projects like this. And I think just this discussion here, I think points out how money gets moved around, which is a good thing when it comes in that pricing to doing the work is less. So that gives extra money. But what I want to have clarity on with the board and a little bit more transparency is then where does that money go? And just because it was on a report 2 quarters ago as a potential project, I think there just needs to be a little bit more transparency and a process around how the park board weighs in on projects. Because what's happening then is, okay, if money's available, then planning department decides, okay, we'll do this project, and the park board may not be aware of that. I think that became evident as well in discussions that we had or emails that you forward to us on some other projects in the system where projects are underway, but the board wasn't aware of it. So I think we just need to use this as an opportunity to think through how the transparency with projects like this to the board. And it's on a, again, I'm in favor, obviously, of all of these, but I don't want to lose sight of the need for further discussion by the board on how we get transparency into projects before they are started with monies that are available.
I have just one question. It has to do with DEI. And so in each of these, do we have, as it passed through the DEI hurdle?
For
So for instance, if we say yay to this, will it indeed be able to go forward and get done? Or is it going to be kicked because the DEI isn't complied with?
the parking lot projects are term contract work, so DEI does not do a review of them. The painting project, it's pending city manager approval because we've been directed to do it as a direct award. So when we do a direct award, we write a letter. It goes from Kara to the procurement officer, and she'll sign off on it. Because it's over $50,000, then it needs to go to the city manager for approval. But we're following purchasing's advice, so we expect it will go through.
Great, thanks.
And
Mr.
Cindy,
Chair.
this is, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Linda.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. In reviewing these, I had a couple questions. One is, what is the next step? Assuming approval, what is the next step? And the other one is, for me, it would be helpful if we could tie this to other discussions about capital investment and improvements that we've had. So as I look at these projects, how are they impacting the list of things we've identified that we want to get done in the 2-year period that we talked about following our report on needed capital improvements? So if we could tie this all together in a more complete picture, it would be helpful to me as we think about the work that we're doing and how it's addressing the work that we've identified as priority work to be done. If however that gets described, that would be helpful. And also, when will we hear about the action on these? What's the timeline? What is the completion date? And what are the milestones? So we know that we're on the path to really getting these things taken care of off the list.
The two parking lot projects are term contract work. So right now we are waiting for purchasing to approve a bonding increase for the road restoration contract that we will use. That they should have that in place within a couple of weeks. Then the money will get certified and then we are good to go. The asphalt plants are shut down right now. They'll open up in about a month. So I can see both of these projects starting in April. I would expect them to be completed in May. The painting projects, we need to get the approval from the city manager. It will probably be on her agenda on Tuesday. And if we do get approval on that, we would probably have a work order in place within a month. And then we would need to talk to the contractor about how he wants to approach these 3 projects. There's a lot of work involved. We will just need to see what kind of schedule they have to kind of move forward. I would expect the work to be done over the summer, and should have them all wrapped up in August or September, I would expect.
And then the final comment I'll make, Linda, to your questions about communication of where we are in the process. One of the things that is currently underway is between both myself and Mr. Schuckman for the capital projects, as well as myself and Mr. Sherman for the fiscal reporting, a comprehensive look at our report outs, how we communicate that information to you. And I think a lot of the items that you mentioned are things that we would consider in the redevelopment of those monthly reports that you receive. So while the answer is not yet answered, we certainly hear your question, appreciate your question, and we'll continue to look into how we can effectively communicate that information.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim,
one
go ahead.
last, and this is not a criticism of park staff. I just want to understand, because when I see in the report that these contracts, this is on the painting again, the three facilities. It says that it was denied by DEI twice. So I'm just curious how this happens, that we start this process, we submit this, it gets denied twice, and then now it said, well, you can just do it as a direct award. So why, number one, why did we submit something? Well, just walk us through that, because that's very confusing to me. Why don't we just do a direct reward right out of the gates, rather than submitting twice, getting rejected twice, and now having to go for direct award?
Okay, sure. So the city has these maintenance contracts with several different contractors. I believe there's 6 of them, and it's small dollar maintenance awards. So any type of construction project, instead of putting it out for a full-blown public bid, what we can do instead is put it out to just these few companies that already have contracts. And it's supposed to be a streamlined process because they already have contracts. When we do award the work, all we need to do then is a work order. These contractors have already been vetted by the city. They have established relationships with the city, understand our rules and our regulations. So the first time we put this project out, we had the other benefit to us is that we can do specifications that aren't as detailed and drawings that aren't as detailed, because we aren't putting it out for a full-blown public bid. So there's a lot of positives for us, and the process should be fast. When we have to do a project, do you want me to go through the entire process?
No, not that. I'm just curious why if these are pre-approved vendors, and I understand that, why don't we just go from the very beginning for a direct reward rather than submitting twice?
When you do a direct award, you're basically asking procurement, and you're asking the city manager, we don't want to do your process. Instead, we want to award to this specific person because of certain circumstances. Usually you do a direct award for a very specialized project, or if you need to purchase something from somebody that you can only get in one place. That's typically what you do a direct award for. So what purchasing told us to do, because we went through this process twice and both times all of the bids were rejected, and it had to do with the WBE portion of what they were asking, the utilization they were looking for WBE. Both times they couldn't make it. So purchasing said, okay, go ahead and do a direct award request. We're going to the low bidder. We're going to hold them to all of the goals that they said they were going to meet. I think the WBE goal for this particular project was 4%, and they made 1%. So we're going to go ahead and tell them that they have to meet, they still need to do the 1%, and they still need to meet the MBE goal. And that's the way that we're going to award it. Otherwise, we can't award the project.
And Jim, I do think that you're asking an incredibly important question, and it's something that we all have identified is slowing the process. One of the things that myself and Mr. Sherman will be doing is both with purchasing as well as with DEI is talking about these processes, the length of time that it is taking, and whether or not that's serving us as we expect it to serve us, and what we can do from there. So correctly identified that this is an issue, and in this specific case, something that extended this project an incredibly long time frame.
Yeah, and again, we don't set the DEI goals, and we can't really have an impact on them. So it goes out with those goals. Sometimes the contractors don't fill out a correct form and it gets rejected, and that's very frustrating for all involved. And in this case, second time around, they didn't quite meet one of the goals. And the city's point of view is they're not goals or targets, they're mandatory. So that's just something we have to work with and live with.
Yes, commissioners, this is something we have to deal with. And it is frustrating on our side when we see these bids get rejected on the ones that we could accept. And that's definitely something like Kara was stating, that we need to be working with purchasing on a better process for not only us, but other city departments, because the direct award is meant for specific reasons. It's not meant for this project. So that's something that we need to work with purchasing on, and purchasing needs to help clean that up.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? And I'm assuming that the reason French is so high is because you're taking it down to 85 to 90% bare wood, all the scraping.
That's correct. There's a lot of work to do there.
Okay, but that's a brick building though, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot of wood trim on it.
Man, that's a lot of money for a brick building to paint. So anyway, glad I don't live there.
Old houses are expensive.
Yeah, they are. You're not telling me anything. Right, Linda? We know all about old houses, don't we? Okay, then. No other questions? Can we go ahead and approve these contracts here? Have a motion?
Motion to approve the contract over 50,000.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Susie. Mary?
President Linder,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, Cindy, one last go around with you.
Last one.
Yeah.
Save the best for last. This is for approval of a contract over $50,000 to automated systems engineering. Employee safety has been working with staff to improve electrical safety and establish protocols throughout the city. This arc flash study will provide additional direction to staff to minimize chances of accidents. We are asking board approval to allow us to enter into a contract with Automated Systems Engineering to perform these arc flash studies for our electrical equipment.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Cindy? The only question I have is what these guys are going to do is identify the potential problem areas as it relates to protocols, procedures to appropriately deal with that. Are they going to be designing those or writing those, or are they just kind of pointing out the areas of risk, and that our safety and risk management team would come up with the appropriate protocols and so on?
Park staff is going to be pulling a lot of information on the electric panels and all the equipment, and they're going to be submitting, we're going to somehow submit it in some kind of a package to this engineering firm to assess all of our electrical systems and make sure that they are safe. A lot of them will need warning labels on them, or they will be identifying the types of PPE equipment our staff needs to have on while they're working on this equipment.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work involved on their end, but also on our end. But the end result should be a more safe working environment for our staff.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just last question. What's the source of funds for this?
It's capital.
Okay. Jim, any other?
I would just move that we approve this
Okay, thank you.
study.
We have a second?
I just had,
Oh, yeah,
I'll
go ahead, Linda.
I just had a quick question that I couldn't get in fast enough. This is, I wanted to understand this is for the assessment of the situation. If there are any corrections or whatever that needs to be made as a result of the assessment, that's an additional.
That's correct. And right now, right. I don't think we're really, just from conversations with maintenance staff, we're not expecting there to be any corrections required. We are holding, I believe it's $200,000 in the capital budget right now, like just in case that there are any improvements or changes that need to be made. But this is more to just minimize hazards for staff, any potential hazard. It's more like labeling equipment and things like that, so our staff knows what kind of protection they need to have.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I second.
All right, thank you, Linda. Mary?
President Linder,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yeah.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
And up next on the hit parade is Crystal, who's going to talk to us about natural resources, and I can't remember what UF stands for.
Urban forestry.
Urban forestry, thank you. Okay.
So good morning, commissioners, and thank you for your time. The item I'm bringing forth today is to request an appropriation of funds from Fund 792 for our urban forestry program and Fund 430 for our green space program. As you know, over the past 6 months, our leadership team has been in deep budget review, and through that process, our CFO has helped us discover some funds that were underutilized in past years. So with that, it's given us the ability to catch up on some much needed preventative maintenance work in the urban forestry program, as well as enter into new contractual services for our green space program, as outlined in the board report. So in addition to this, we're requesting funds from 430 for the Fountain Square Hawk Fund to cover cost of the summer display in Fountain Square this year. This additional appropriation reflects the increased cost of green space incurred in the summer of 2020 due to the team's furlough from April to July. They had to use the 2020 funds to cover the summer display that would have come out of 2019 had they been present to do the work. So that's what I'm presenting to you today for approval.
All right, thank you, Crystal. Questions for Crystal? Wow, looks like you might get off easy today, huh?
I'll take it.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Linda.
I'm not certain that it's related specifically to this report, but I'm just remembering a report we got data analysis of canopy cover for the city and where we should be planting. And I just wanted to see if we could get some update on that at some point. How's that going? Are we planting where we think we should be according to the data, and how long it's going to take us to get to where we want to be? So probably unrelated to this, but it's
Good
spurred the thought for
question.
me.
Always related. So we are currently working with a contractor that's performing the urban tree canopy assessment. So we've gotten some pretty phenomenal data back so far, but the project won't actually come to completion until the end of the year. So that right now they're going through the LiDAR data and putting together the land classification for Cincinnati and the entire county, so all of Hamilton County. And then we'll go through this period of tree planting, developing a tree prioritization planting plan. So that'll be based on heat islands, stormwater impacts, PM 2.5, so particulate matter 2.5, as well as just ensuring that our canopy is equitably distributed. And then from that, we will have basically based on those priorities, we'll have a planting plan that we'll be using for the next 10 years to guide that process. So because we wanted to shorten this agenda this month, I'm happy to bring that to you in March or April. Like I said in the last meeting, the data is really neat, and I would love for Matt DeBona to give that presentation because he's been working tooth and nail with our contractors to make sure they have our extensive amount of data to do the best analysis possible.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that.
Yes, I think with all the head nodding I saw on the screen, I think to be able to put that on the agenda in the next month or two would be a great idea. I too look forward to hearing about that and learning what kind of trees you're thinking about planting. So, maybe next month or the month following, we could expand upon that.
Yes, sir. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the last thing I would say is that it's just for clarity here, what we are asking, the largest piece of this is $733,000. Those are funds that are available sitting in a restricted fund. So this is not drawing down anything out of our commissioners fund. It's just allowing us to access and asking City Council to allow us to access funds that are already available, sitting, waiting for appropriation.
Yes, sir. So Fund 792 is a restricted fund that can only be used for forestry. So in the attachment, you also saw where those funds have accumulated over the past few years. And a lot of that is due to either contractual snafus, changing from doing an RFP to an RFQ process. And then also, from my understanding, the team got behind in the early 2000s, 2012 to 2015, because of switching gears to removing all of the ash trees throughout the city in response to the emerald ash borer. So finding these funds, which is great to finally see our bank account. Craig has been phenomenal in making our budget very transparent, and it's really helping us determine how best to utilize the funds. So basically, it'll give us an opportunity to get caught up in preventative maintenance and essentially providing better customer service for the entire city, or for at least for the neighborhoods that we will be able to impact this year, as well as improving staff morale. Because if you can imagine, once you get behind on preventative maintenance, you get a lot more phone calls and you have to deal with a lot more fires to put out. So I think in the long run, this is a great opportunity for us to get caught up.
Thank you. I fully agree.
I have a question about this 792 fund. I'm new here, but this is the second time we've talked about this 792 fund. And I'm looking through these financial reports, and I don't think there's anything that references this fund, what's in the fund, what it can be used for, is there anything in here about this 792 fund?
I think in the one statement that is fund balances report that is in the below in the packet, you'll see that as of February 8th, I believe it was, you'll see down at the bottom there, and I'm doing this by memory, the last line is 792. And I think that shows a fund balance of over 800 and some $1,000. So this would be accessing and getting approval to access that 792 fund. Molly, this is the fund where there's street tree assessment and everything. If I'm speaking out of turn, somebody stop me, but this is where funding goes for street trees and for money that's collected for, based on linear foot and all of that by, from the city residents, as well as money from the city, state, and federal government goes into that fund. The mechanism, though, is that city council, even though it's restricted to use by the park board has to request it, and then the city has to appropriate taking that money out of that account to allow expenditure. So that's the account, Molly.
And commissioners, I do want to point out, so if you do look at the fund balance, and I believe it is around like 800, maybe close to $900,000, there is revenue that is not reflected within that fund balance. There will be $610,000 that will be deposited into that account, and that is from city, state, and federal assessment dollars. Usually those dollars are placed in that account in December or the fourth quarter, but council audits have held that up for a little bit, but we're getting that cleaned up, and that should be deposited this month.
And the final thing I'll contribute, Commissioner North, you did ask what we were allowed to utilize these. I know Crystal can certainly forward you. Many of the other commissioners have heard from Crystal on many occasions about this fund, but we can certainly share with you the ordinances and the legislation that governs this collection of this tax, as well as what we are permitted to expend the funds on.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Crystal? Okay. Kudos to Craig and team for bird dogging this. Thank you. Can we have a recommendation or a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the additional appropriation of $767?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mary?
President Linear,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last item of business is on-base software purchase. So Patricia, our senior accountant, is going to present this.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys doing? So OnBase is a software. I guess I'll just start with our current process. We right now, for all of our encumbrances, all of our invoices, are utilizing emails and PDF. Yeah, I think I heard somebody go, ooh. So we have, and as you've kind of heard with Cindy's team, we would like to be able to help out more, to do better, understanding the purchasing process. There have been a lot of changes that have occurred within just that process and what is required first and foremost, and, you know, kind of going down the line. So right now we have all of our encumbrances are emailed to our Parks Finance email. We then go in there, manually pull them out, put them in a folder, have Craig sign it. And then once all of that approval is in, then Ray, our accountant, is going into CFS and entering everything. What we have discovered is that OnBase is a product that is used currently by the Waterworks Department as well as the MSD Department, and it is a document management product. So what it would end up doing is it would present a more electronic approach to this, where our operations staff would be able to go in either by phone, on a computer. They would be able to enter in their Form 1s, their encumbrances, and it would then route that electronically to the approver and then route it to the finance department. So what we see there is a time saving that would allow us as the accounting team to actually be able to dig more into those more complicated encumbrances as those occur. And then from the invoice standpoint, we would have invoices mailed and entered into OnBase, and it would actually link from start to finish the encumbrance, the invoices paid off of that encumbrance. It would provide a dashboard that would allow us easy tracking of it. So to get right down into the actual cost of this software, we've been in communication with OnBase. We started off at $157,000 was the proposal for the implementation. We have been able to get them down to $109,000 for implementation. As far as the annual licensure fee, which obviously is based on the number of users, we got them down from $39,000 to $34,000 annually. That is with the same amount of users. And we got them to remove the $10,000 setup fee. The funding source for these funds would be the Commissioner's Fund. The Meyer Fund in particular within the Commissioner's Fund is what we are proposing that we use. And OnBase, while we're actually using it right now in our phase run for encumbrances and invoices, OnBase is a product that we would be able to expand across the park for other functionalities. For instance, there's HR documentation, facility management. They have requests that come in. I know I talked to Megan, there's requests for like sign printing. We will be able to add on this functionality within OnBase so that we can just have better tracking of all of the requests that kind of flow through parks. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Patricia. I do want to add on. I realize, like, from an ROI standpoint, we're not going to be decreasing any FTEs. There's the time savings there that's reflected in that ROI, and that time savings is going to allow, obviously, additional time for Jane to concentrate on other duties within her task, because we are razor thin right now with losing our accounts payable associate, and that position was eliminated. So this does free up, like, Jane from constantly having to review like invoices and managing those invoices. Same with Ray, and even myself, I go in and actually help out Ray and review the submissions within CFS, because that's something the operations does not have access to. None of the operations has access to go into CFS to check on statuses. That's where we have to manually go in, check on the status. Then actually I do have Ray, he created a spreadsheet where associates can go and look at it, but still that's something that is a very manual process. He has to go in and check on those statuses, where this will be a semi-interface with CFS, where it'll be providing some information, especially on the dollar amounts that for each encumbrances. Additionally, from an operational standpoint, they'll be able to go out there to pull their information instead of asking for my team to go out there and pull the information and send it to them.
And as they all mentioned, they were mentioning members of their team who work really hard to keep us on track, just an inordinate amount of time, which is being spent on these manual processes, that is keeping our team from expanding the creativity that they could have to allow us to advance in other ways. So incredibly supportive, and thank you, Patricia, for laying out this project for us, or opportunity for us.
So I understand that you can add on to this. HR or other departments can piggyback on the same program. From if we would go in that direction in the future, is that additional, call it upfront purchase, or would that just be more annual license based upon the number of users?
It would probably encompass both of those. So
Okay.
there would be a cost to implement this new, we'll call it a module, if we wanted to add on HR. There would be that cost. I don't know upfront what it would be. We would obviously be in communication with them, but if we add new users, there would be an additional user fee.
Sure.
Right now, some of those HR people are added on to the users that we will have for finance because they provide encumbrances, they have requests for funds. So right now, there might not be the need to add an additional user, and we could at least save on that side of it.
Okay.
Yes, commissioners, as for design services, that's something that we would have to look at them for designing new platforms or new processes in there for each of the different units. Unlike MSD and Greater Cincinnati Water Works, they have both of them have robust IT staff, but we do not. We have two wonderful IT individuals, and they're pretty booked up on helping out the parks operations.
Yeah. IT is usually pretty booked up wherever you go, seems to me.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, this is basically a document management software, correct? So that's where we're paying for them to set up online the functionality that we need for managing the approval of invoices and requests and that sort of thing. So if you think about it, if we wanted to expand that into an HR application, we would just have to have somebody design for us in the software what it is that we would want to have done. But that being said, just for this project or getting the software in place, I think I really appreciate both Patricia and Craig coming up with this because it does show that they're looking at processes and what is taking so much time. And I think that what you have here in front of you is a piece of software, an application that will, when you think about the park board and all the different pieces, all the different approval levels, all the different departments, when I talk through this with both Patricia and Craig, it's incredible the amount of time and energy it takes to use email and PDFs to circulate documents for approval. So I give them kudos for looking at and finding a solution for us to do this. And I think it really will help give them and Craig's staff the opportunity to not be doing a lot of busy work that will then free them up to do more analytical work and more strategic work. So from my perspective, I think it's an investment that is well worth it.
Thanks, Jim. Any other comments or questions? Well, I would say whoever did the job of negotiating did a good job getting them down. And if we go back for round two, whoever was doing that, I'd suggest they step up to the plate and negotiate again. So very good job. Thank you, guys. Can we have a motion then to move forward with this purchase and project?
So moved that we approve the recommendations.
Second, please.
Second.
All right, Mary, roll call vote.
President Lerner,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you all. Next item on the agenda is commissioner comments. Are there any out there?
I have one that I want to raise, Brad.
Sure.
So I've gotten kind of a bit of word that there may be an opportunity, and I have presented this to Kara, that there may be an opportunity for the parks to benefit from some of the COVID relief stimulus dollars, which the city anticipates, which may be something quite extraordinary. And as I understand it, it's not known at this time whether, well, I think it's believed at this time that these are going to be use it or lose it type of dollars, and that the placement of those dollars will have to be done in pretty short order. And I don't know if that means started this year or completed this year, but I think it's an opportunity that the city won't want to miss, and that the city will also look to the parks to be a partner in that and get some of these dollars placed. So, you know, obviously we've got lots of deferred maintenance that may present an opportunity, and perhaps even some more strategic projects that the commissioners have planned for over some time.
So, yeah, that begs us to make sure to strike while the iron is hot, if you will, and make sure our capacity to get stuff done is there, and it's well oiled and ready to rock and roll when, if and when this does happen, because I would hate to see us lose out on that opportunity and have those dollars go to some less deserving community and or project. And we know we're at the top of the list as far as deserving communities, and we've got the best projects. So let's make sure that we have our capacity is there to make it happen. Thank you, Molly.
Well,
Any other? Go ahead.
No, it doesn't look like we've got the assistant city manager's office on the line today, but one thing, Kara, that I do intend to take back, and maybe, I don't even know if this is a good idea, but what I have kind of read between the lines is that when we take on these projects, there's obviously time involved. You've got to design it, you've got to permit it. And I just think that if the city is really trying to get capital dollars invested in a quick way, it really needs to come together with a team that will prioritize moving much more rapidly than the city is accustomed to working. And again, I do intend to bring this up with the assistant city manager's office, but I can't see how we or the city collectively can be successful in getting this placed without a core team that's, you know, focused on pushing harder and not going through the process of going through DEI and getting rejected twice just to sit in line for city manager's signature. It won't work.
Molly, can I ask you a question about this? Because a lot of this money, like the PPE money and so on, you have to document incredibly how it's been spent and so on. Otherwise, if you can't prove your case, you have to pay it back. Would this fall into the same situation?
I wish I had more information, Susie, but just all I can tell is practically what I've told now, which is that and I don't know if it's this most recent bill, but that through the city, these municipalities are going to be granted dollars. On what basis? I don't know. On what payback basis? I don't know. I presume that there has to be evidence that it qualifies for whatever the bill provides for in order to access the dollars. And then I also presume that there will be a point by which you can't apply for those dollars anymore and they're just gone. But yes, I'm certain that there are some hurdles to get the funds. I don't know what those are.
Okay, it's very interesting, and I agree with you. I mean, let's get our oar in there. But how do we do that? Just through the
We have
business manager's office?
Go ahead, Kara.
Thank you. We have begun. As Commissioner North identified, this is an incredibly early stage, very unspecific request. We did receive a question from the budget office on what were our shovel-ready projects. Our planning team did send over all of those projects that we did have prepared from our capital budget submission. So we've given them we've given some additional details, but essentially shovel-ready projects. But to Commissioner North's comment, we didn't really know what we were aiming for, other than what are some projects that we are nearly or are ready or nearly ready to proceed on. So as we get more information, we'll be able to determine if there are opportunities beyond what we have submitted, but it just has not been communicated. They said, what are you ready to move on? And we sent them the list that
Okay.
with projects that you've already seen.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
This is incredible opportunity here, and I would hate to miss it as well. I do think this is an area, if information like that went to the city, I know part of our resolution that we have adopted is that information that goes to the city gets shared with the commissioners as well. So I would like to see what it is that Parks has submitted to the city as the quote shovel-ready projects. I would be interested in seeing that, and just a reminder that reports and information like that goes to the city is to be shared with the commissioners so that we have a heads up as we do interact with the city administration. So thank you. Thank you for bringing it up, Molly.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that comment. It was an email exchange between the budget office and our CFO and planning team. I do appreciate that comment, Commissioner Getz, that was on the approvals and advice requirements.
I have one other question. Mr. Schuckman, you have the list of projects here and an update of them. Can you just give us some highlights? I mean, how are things going? What's behind? What's ahead?
Sure.
Are things where you expect them to be?
That's an interesting question, because between the weather recently, we experienced again last night, and the pandemic, it certainly has impacted our projects. I think that we're generally on course. Lot 23, which is the extension of Smale, we certainly meet weekly on that. They've been challenged by the weather now particularly, so we're looking at how to recover time. The contract for that is supposed to be completed by May 1st, so that the Ray Street corridor is pretty much done and is in good shape. The rest of the deck, if you're familiar with the site, the podium for lot 23 is basically the cover for the garage. So the garage is done and can be opened. Final inspections are happening now. But what goes on top of the podium, it is a challenge with the weather. Trying to do what we can to speed it up, but snow removal has taken a lot of their time. So that one is teetering on moving back a little further into May. It's my understanding that the Icon Music Center, like the rest of the industry, isn't ready to be booking concerts at this point, but we're still trying to keep that on point. So I think that one is being a little bit delayed. Tom Jones Commons also it looks like it's being a little bit delayed. We're hoping for an early May opening. I'll have to check back with the contractors. That might move a little later into May. It was going well before the weather hit, and so we knew it was certainly weather dependent. Let me look at the other ones. Yeah, when the fishing pier is probably 70% completed, and that's an observation deck at Sawyer Point. When the river came up, so they have to wait for the river to go down. It's actually, the work's being done on the river side by barge, so that's definitely affected by weather. There's probably a month worth of work left on that at whatever point they can get back in. And the Johnson Park design and cost estimate is moving well. We should be able to bring that to the board probably at the March meeting or at the April meeting. I think that covers the highlights. Yeah, and there's some projects, for instance, Tom Jones Commons, I see isn't there. When there's nothing in particular new to report, it doesn't show up on my monthly report. We just try to update the board on where we are, if there's any changes, any new work that we've done within the last reporting period, and again, where we are in projects. I'd be happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Steve.
Sure.
Proof of concept for mountain biking. have we proved that concept yet, or is that still up for debate?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking in terms of mountain biking.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is when we started with the original approved section at Mount Airy Forest, that was couched as a proof of concept project to see how it plays out. And I'm just curious as to where if we've moved out of the proof of concept status and gone into it's been proven or disproven, or are we still kind of in that space? And the reason I'm asking this is I had a good conversation with most of the leadership of Cora a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you that they are, excited about the upcoming season. They've projected or committed, again, their support and tons of volunteer labor to make things happen. And one of the things that came up in conversation, if you recall, I don't know, maybe it was a year or two ago, the mayor had suggested why not look at Mount Airy Forest and all the trails there and what could be just converted to multi-use trails at that point in time. And I think the original thought was let's park staff and Cora staff walk some of the trails and say, yeah, this one's a good one, this one's not good for multi-use. And then it kind of morphed into the skills park. And I'm not sure if that was our initiative or more bandwidth or lack of bandwidth from Cora to do that. But I did get a commitment from Cora that those guys are ready to jump back on that project if there's a need. So that's, or a desire, I guess.
Okay.
So
yeah.
If you want to tackle, I have some comments as well.
Yeah, well, first of all, in terms of proof of concept, we did talk about the mixed-use trail, the mountain bike trail in Mount Airy as being a kind of a test case. And I would say It's been very successful, so successful that it's one of the reasons we pushed forward on not just the expansion of the parking lot at the main trailhead, but Shepherd Creek. There was a little gravel pull-off, and there just wasn't room for all the cars because the trail's been proved so popular. And from my observation, very well built. So I think that's been very successful.
Good.
We've had, and actually just last evening was the second meeting that I held with stakeholders to talk about recommendations for the future of Mount Airy Forest. And there was discussion about mountain bike trails. And we are moving ahead with the bike skills course in Mount Airy. And at some future point, weather permitting, we will be walking some of the trails with our trail people and with Cora to see what, if any, trails might be suitable for mountain biking. The one trail that we do want to create is to connect the mountain bike skills course down the hill to the trailhead for the mountain bike course. There was some concern expressed last night about, and it's not the first time we've heard that, about potential conflicts between hikers and off-road bikes, so that we want to be very careful about where it's okay to mountain bike and where it isn't. And so that's something that we just need to explore further with Cora. And we had planned to walk the trails to look at that. I was going to do that with Doug and with other people. So again, when the weather allows that, we will be doing that.
You don't have any snowshoes?
I don't. I did have skis, but I don't know if that would help me.
I want you to know I have several pairs in my garage left over from our Colorado days.
That's good
I
to know.
donate them to the parks.
That's good to know.
Commissioner, I will also add, I am entirely thrilled to see that those trails are being successful. That is a realm of park development that I am familiar with my previous employers. And one of my very first opportunities when I joined Cincinnati Parks was to be involved in the groundbreaking, or not the groundbreaking, the grand opening of those bike trails. And I think it is fair to acknowledge that we were behind the 8 ball on that. This is an incredibly supported and established recreational activity. I personally think it's a wonderful incorporation into a park setting, as it's a very low impact. It's a very quiet sport and activity. And I look forward to those continued involvements. One thing that is necessary for the success of these types of amenities in public parks is having a strong friends group, support group to continue to maintain and advocate for the betterment of those trails. And as you identified, we do have that with Cora. They are an exceptional group in terms of groups out there that exist. So yeah, I was excited to come here on the kind of the onset of this incorporation into the city parks, and I see this as a continued venture. Specifically with the skills bike area, that was a project that was proposed by Cora, but it was an identification that kind of region-wide areas that allowed for the development of the basic skills in order to kind of graduate into the trails were not present in the region. So that's why they made that presentation to us, recommendation to us. And a while ago now is when we accepted that was a good idea for our system.
Well, the other thing to maybe to put in the back of your minds is, I know that we heard from police last meeting of some of the nefarious activities that and Mount Airy is no exception, and that might be, you know, occurring there more than many others. So this is a great opportunity. Trails offer, you know, traffic, people, sunlight, if you will, that can impact some of those nefarious activities. So something also to consider. If they've got some problem areas, all you need to do is throw a couple of trails in there, and it should have a positive impact. And I guess the other thing I would continue to point out is the price is right on mountain bike trails. You know, it's effectively free. So again, I'd be remiss if I didn't periodically throw my 2 cents in for the support of our trail system and expanding. So I'm glad to see you converted, Steve, or convinced anyway that that we're on the right track.
I think we are, and in the community engagement session I held last night, the police did participate, and one of the things they did say, it echoed what you just said, to have more activities and events in Mount Airy Forest, as well as the visibility of trails, and more people on trails certainly helps the situation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Steve, I have one question.
Sure.
Regarding the RFP was prepared for engineering services for stabilization of the river edge at Riverfront Park. Where does that stand?
We are, I think we're still at the point of getting permission from the city manager to put that out, going through the city process. And as you may well be familiar, from the Roebling Bridge west to the west edge of the park at Elm Street, we keep losing real estate there. We had some money reserved to treat that edge and hopefully to match future federal money coming through the Corps of Engineers. But the first step is really to get some engineering sense and at least a very preliminary cost estimate. What are we talking about in terms of costs? And we're talking
it's really important. Excuse me for interrupting you, but it's really important that we move forward with this so that our lobbyists have something to show to the Corps of Engineers about why we really need these millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's a which comes first, the chicken or the egg, you know, kind of a thing. And anyway, so I really encourage movement on that.
Yeah, we are moving on that. I hope to have at least to go entirely through the process, have an engineer hired. Of course, we'll come back to the board when we actually have a contract ready to go, and hope to have some preliminary indications by this fall, so we have a real hard number to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
One question I would have for Steve, also then on the boat dock, it says in your report that an RFQ should be ready to go to purchasing by the end of February. We approved that a couple months ago, and so who's holding this up? I had former Commissioner Flynn ask the question earlier this week of me as well. It sounds, I'm trying to figure out, and he's trying to figure out where the holdup is on getting that RFQ out.
Yeah, and Jenny can chime in. We've been working back and forth with purchasing and the city administration on the very early steps of putting a selection committee together to get to the point that we can actually put the RFQ out. So Jenny, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yes, so the selection or the evaluation committee has been selected with our recommendation and through purchasing. And the checklist that we are required to do to get signed off by the city manager has been completed. I am 3/4 of the way finished drafting the actual RFQ. And right now, the goal release for that RFQ is February 22nd.
Okay, well, that was a question. I know Commissioner Flynn was hearing multiple reports that we thought the DEI, that the city was holding it up, but then the city said, no, the parks hasn't submitted the RFQ paperwork yet. So that explains it. Again, I would hate to miss an opportunity with somebody ready to go because we haven't gotten the information to get the RFQ out, but thank you for that.
Yeah, there was no holdup on our part, just so you understand that.
Well, yes, or what? She's not dead and gonna do.
We are, Steve, can you
Wait a minute. I thought I just heard though that we haven't submitted the RFQ documentation yet, right?
Yeah, but the reason we're at the point we are now just to submit that documentation was because of delays working through with purchasing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, next meeting, regular date, March 18th. Looking forward to that. And then we are going to go into an executive session here. So, and if for those of you that have watched the show before, you will realize that when we come back out of executive session, all we're going to do is adjourn. So I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 parenthesis G to consider the employment and compensation of a public employee. And this will require a roll call vote.
Can we have a second on that motion as well, please?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, President Linder,
Yes.
Vice President Getz,
Yes.
Commissioner Castellini,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner North,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And you'll let us know when we're offline, Mary?